Our Unity version and installation. Because to do stuff in Unity, you have to have Unity on your computer. To get started, you would want to either go to our Getting Started page, vgdc.org/getting started, or you can just go to the Unity website and download. Both will lead you to the Unity website. You'll get to download Unity Hub, and then once you have that, we can go through a little bit. We'll go through the rest of that a little bit later. So just make sure you have Unity Hub on your computer machine if you have it with you. If you don't have it with you, or if you miss anything during this presentation, don't worry. We'll be uploading it to the Discord and our email mailing list, so you'll be able to look at it later. All right. So what do we do here in Den? We teach and we learn. So new members can get a handle on basic skills as well as some starting development experience. For all you people that have little to no development experience, we're going to try and get you guys to make your first games, at least something. And then for the more experienced members, I know there's some of you here or in the other room, we have them as mentors. They'll be helping you guys out on your journey. So what do we do every week? We'll have different weekly meeting activities. One of the main ones is the first 2 weeks are going to be this week and next week, which is sort of the introduction. After that, we'll be having Mentor Mania, which is basically where all those mentors that I mentioned earlier will be having specific stuff. So like there will be one for 3D modeling, there will be one for 2D art, there will be one for programming. If you're interested, whichever one you want to go to, you go to that one that week, and they'll be doing a little mini workshop to help teach you guys some stuff. Every other week, we'll be doing interest workshops, pairing with that, where anything, any member that has a special interest or something that they want to talk about, they can come to us and do a workshop on some sort of special topic in game development. Some previous ones we've had is level design, music making, Pro Builder, which is a Unity tool for modeling, stuff like that. And then at all times, at every meeting, we will also be having Dev Assist, which is just the idea that you guys can come to us and ask us questions if you have problems. If you're working on something and you need help, talk to us, and we'll help you out. Another thing that we're going to be doing is the Introduction Jam. So starting next week, we will be having a 1-month game jam where you guys will be separated into teams, and you will have 1 month to start making a game. It's a pretty short time scale, but it ends right before we do our seasonal jam with the entire club. So hopefully you'll have a little bit of experience in the engine to be ready to hop into something like that. So what is a game jam? If you don't know what that is, it's an event where you work with a team to develop a game that fits a specific theme that we'll give you. Previous themes have been something like Switch, repair, something like that. You take that theme, you come up with a game idea that fits it, and you spend a small amount of time, usually about like 2 days to a month or something, and try to build a game. And expectations for this jam are very low. We are not expecting super finished, polished products. Just learn some stuff, make some stuff, and meet some people. That's what we expect from you.
Yeah, I sound like broken record with this because I always say this. The game jams are the single best way to learn game development. Just getting in and getting that hands-on experience, there is no better way. So you guys should be really hyped that we're planning something like this to do something like this. So it's a great opportunity.
So what can you expect to learn while you're here? Many things. Programming. And that's what a lot of people think programming is. And then you have the realistic version of what actual programming is. Then you have some other stuff, like if you're not into the whole typing version of programming, we also have visual scripting. We can teach that. There's also state machines and stuff for animations if you ever end up doing that, and a lot of the tools in the Unity editor. We have 3D digital art. I'll be mainly focusing on this, so if you have any questions about this, talk to me or some of the other mentors. Here are some examples, including our T-Pose Roblox character. 2D digital art, this is Megan's house. Another thing 2D art is very helpful for is for all the 3D modelers. They'll make that white thing, and then they have no experience in making it the pretty version. So we need texture artists to go make the textures and make it look pretty. Animation is another thing. With 2D animation, you have to draw every single frame, usually seen in sprite sheets like that one there. 3D animation is usually done through armatures and keyframing. So you can see there we have Kratos in different poses. Those are your keyframes. And the computer will say, okay, well I need to go from this frame to that frame, and it'll figure it out. And that's where you can see an example of that in action there with Dead Cells. Another thing is the effects. So all those shaders, effects, particles you see in games, we have experience with that too, and we will be able to get you guys started with it. And more, including those interest workshops that we had talked about previously. They will go into more general topics or special, outside of the general topics, they will go into more specialized things. So anything really specific, you guys can even come up with something. Yes, sorry.
Are most of these topics also going to be covered in like undergrad classes?
Some of them will. We try to kind of give you guys the experience of just being able to do stuff. The problem with undergrad classes is that currently I want to do like 3D art and technical stuff, so like the VFX things, which you need to know art, you need to know computer science for coding, and a lot of other stuff, and there's no direct pathway for that. So what I'm doing right now is I have a major in computer science, I have a minor in art, and I'm still like trying to like finagle my schedule to fit all the classes in. Hopefully with this, having a club and people and resources that you can go to will make learning that sort of stuff a lot easier. Yes? Primary experience is always nice, but the idea behind all of this is that you are going to go in blind and we'll still be able to pick you up. All right. So what do you need for development? What are the essentials? You got to have developers. Will you want to pick this?
Yeah. So we break down a game development team into a few key roles. So the three big disciplines that we talk about, that we kind of herd game development into, are design, which encompasses your big design doc and just thinking about the game and laying it out. We consider programming, which is all of your scripting, mechanics, making the game work. And art, we say basically your 2D art, your 3D art, anything that makes the game look good. And those are our big three fields. And so for a very small team, you'd ideally want to have at least one person to do all of these things. And then we also put producer, because in any team, there's got to be somebody that takes on the role of making it happen. They're keeping track of tasks in like Trello. They're making cards for things. They're saying, this person's working on this person's working on this. How are we gonna, are we gonna get this by a deadline, or are we gonna, how do we keep this moving? And that's the role of the producer, which in a very bare bones team can be, the responsibility can be split among the artists and the programmers. It can be one person's job. That's kind of more fluid, but generally you want at least a programmer, a designer, and an artist.
Yeah, and I think that's why we put in the Mr. Gammon watch there, because a lot of times you'll find yourself on your teams juggling a lot of responsibilities, especially if you know how to do one or more things. Speaking as someone who knows how to do a little bit of art and a little bit of coding, I sometimes will end up having to do both on a project.
So, some of the biggest responsibilities of a development team: you need to communicate. A team that doesn't communicate doesn't work. If nobody's talking in Discord, if nobody's hopping in calls, if nobody's showing up to in-person meetings, you basically don't have a team. And once you do have a team, you need to be able to respect each other. You can disagree on things, but it needs to be civil, and you need to remember you're on the same team for a reason, right? And you're working towards the same vision, which I think we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
The idea of vision. And you need to be able to distribute responsibilities equitably. It shouldn't be one person, having sleepless nights and doing everything, and the other people just kind of coasting by. That's not a fun team to work on.
And don't let someone take away the responsibilities too. Like if someone is really excited about something, they still need to let other people help on the project if it's part of the team.
Exactly. We've got our hats here because
Developers wear many hats.
exactly.
All right. So, what tools will you be using? First tool is your game engine. Within your game engine, you need to know the native scripting language if you're interested in coding, which for Unity is C#. You can also do visual scripting, like I said earlier, through Bolt. You need to know the engine layout and structure. This is pretty helpful for everybody. If you don't really know how to take your stuff and put it into the engine, it can be a little difficult. It's helpful for artists to know the stuff that's specific to them. get used to the animation workflow in Unity, get used to the sound stuff if you're interested in that, all that good stuff. And then just, you got to know all the built-in tools, so that's another thing. Unity has a lot of packages that are very helpful. We'll probably release a list of that at some point in the future, maybe in the next meeting. But there's a load of those that just make development a lot easier, but they don't come built in, so you'll have to find those on the asset store and import them. We'll try to help you with that. All right. The next thing is asset production. Woo! Asset production. All right, so you got to start with your concept. You can start on paper, you can start in your brain, you can draw it on Photoshop, you can sculpt it in ZBrush if you really want to do that. That seems like a lot to me. Then you can move on to modeling, which is where you take that concept. We're saying a 3D asset for this example here. You model that thing in the shape of it, what's the form, in sort of gray boxes, and then you go in and texture it, give it some color, give it some material, make it look like wood if it's a chair. Then if it's a chair that walks around, you got to animate it. Then, only then, do you finally move it over into the game engine, and then hope it does not break. So learning this entire pipeline, is extremely important if you're trying to do art assets. There have been many times, I remember on a game jam, my first game jam, I was trying to make tacos. It took me about like a couple hours to make the tacos, and it took me about twice the amount of time to get it from the model and texturing side into the engine because I kept screwing it up. I had to redo it and redo it and redo it. So it's very helpful to know this beforehand. All right, last one is, again, harping on production and communication. If you do not have a good line of communication with your team and you can't communicate effectively, that's going to be a problem. So luckily we have the club Discord, and we will start making channels and stuff for all of you, and you guys should be able to find each other and set up private Discords and stuff, or any other software that you want to use. I've used GroupMe in the past. Another thing is means of managing tasks. Trello was mentioned earlier. That's a very good website. Just some way of tracking what needs to get done, who's doing it, is it done yet, when does it need to be done by, that sort of stuff. All right, here we go, the game. So what do you need for a game? You need a vision. Not that vision, but a vision. A single idea, like a survival game with blocks is not a game. Because that immediately makes you think of something like Minecraft, right? But that does not explain all the nuances that come with Minecraft. So when you have a game idea, you need to have a vision for all the specifics of that game idea. A vision is what future success looks like. If you want to have a successful game project, the clearer your vision is, the easier it will be for you to get to that. You won't not have to try and reinvent stuff as you go along if you have a clear vision from the start. So describe your ideas for the finished product in as much detail as possible. We have some examples here. Pillars are a good thing that a lot of professional game studios use. So whenever you pitch a game, you pitch its three main pillars. So what are the things that game is built around? For God of War, it's built around combat, the father-son relationship, and exploration. And if you go play that game, you'll notice that those three things are found in almost every aspect of it. And then for art, having a clear idea of what the environment game, what's the look of the game, will help a lot with your artist to be able to make something like that. There you go. Next thing is, how do you put your vision on paper? The design doc. It's a detailed document that includes all aspects of the game. Every major mechanic and feature should be outlined here. Think of it as your vision in paper form. Now, I know some of you may be wondering, oh boy, this seems like a lot of stuff for me to do for a game that I haven't even, if I have a time limit or something. This is only really for professional stuff that you need to really do a design document. I would still recommend having a vision for a game jam project, but you can kind of work with your team to make that. Just don't get overwhelmed with it. All right, so I know there's a lot. It was pretty quick because we have a lot to get through with actually messing around in Unity. Are there any questions so far? No? Everyone's good? On the page? Yes. And what we'll probably do is split everybody up based on what you want to do. So I'll have everybody raise hands on who wants to be coders, who wants to do art, and who wants to do a design. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Yeah. I'll ask who wants to do what, and then we'll have you guys pick teams from there and try to make a balanced team so that there's not just the team with all coders. Yeah. Anyone else have questions? Yes. All right, say it again. That's perfectly fine. We'll be having a lot of the information be going on Discord, and we'll hopefully keep it pretty active. So hopefully you should just be able to attend the club virtually and keep with it that way. The meetings are just a way for everyone to kind of get together and work on stuff.
Where is the link to the Discord?
The link to the Discord, you will get that.
Are you on the email list?
Yes.
There's a link to the Discord at the bottom of every email that gets sent. Should be.
Do you want to see if you can pull up the permanent Discord link on your phone and like write it on the whiteboard? Sure. We'll get the Discord link in a second. Anyone else have questions? Everyone all good? All right. So the Unity game engine. Let's take a look. Now before this, has everyone gotten Unity Hub installed so far? Good? Raise your hand if you have not gotten it installed so far. Okay, a couple people. So, have you guys gone to the Unity website yet?
Yeah, it says it's in progress.
It's just taking a minute?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Luckily, most of this should be available afterwards, and it's sort of, a lot of the information I'm about to go over, you should just be able to do on your own, but it's just kind of getting finer. So hopefully you'll be able to get that. Let's see. All right, so we have Unity. We're going to go to Unity Hub. Yours will look a little bit different than mine. There we go. So, whenever we want to start up a new project, we have Unity. Most of you will probably not have a project. You probably don't even have a version yet. So the first thing you want to do is go to Installs and get a release. I'm currently using this one, but it's 2020.3, which is the latest LTS version, which LTS stands for long-term support. So normally how Unity works is the current year is the development version. It's what they're working on. They're going to keep updating it. Last year or previous year is the long-term support. So if you want to make a game project, it's usually easier to do it in the long-term support version because they will not be constantly updating and changing it. So 2020.3 is the latest. Yours will have like a separate number than mine. It will be like .17, I think. But yeah, so you can install an editor right here. It should be the first one. Pops up, they have all the different LTS versions, and there's the latest development version down there at the bottom. Everyone good so far? Let me know if you're not. All right, yes. Yes, that is what you want to do. Yeah. Yes,
Do you want to use school emails or personal emails?
personal emails. Yeah, for most of the stuff you do in here, you'll probably want to use your personal email. The only thing I can think of that you might not want to is if you are interested in modeling and want to use Maya, because you can get that for your school email, but it would just be easier to do Blender because it's free. You can do that personally. So I don't think you need an email.
I would say, especially do not use your school's Unity, or don't use your school's GitHub.
Oh yeah, do not do that.
GitHub.ncsu.edu, do not use that for this. They don't like you doing that, and you will lose all of it.
Also, yeah, like a lot of the email stuff will get deleted when you leave, from what I understand, right?
Generally, yes. You can kind of keep your email going, but your GitHub you most certainly lose. So all the game projects that you would work on, you would leave when you graduate. You don't want to do that.
All right, I'm going to move on to getting a project started. So, new project. Usually, you guys will have a little arrow next to new project, I think. You open a new project, you need to select the version that you want your project to be. Make sure it's the latest version. If you only have one, it should be the one that you downloaded. Then we want to go to the Learning tab and use the FPS microgame for one of the microgames. Now, let me know if you guys are not seeing this, because I know I'm using a different version of Unity out here. No? Not seeing it? Alright. I think there's another way to do this. So I think you go to the Learn tab here, and then you should be able to find the micro games down at the bottom. Right here. You can do the karting one, for example. You would download your project. You would download project in progress. Sit there for a second. I'm not going to actually go through with this, but once it's done, you have a little open project button, and you should be able to open the project on your machine. Yep. Oh, yeah. All right. So if you guys don't have Unity accounts, I forgot about this completely. You need to make a Unity account. You can do that in the top corner of the editor. I think it's on this side or this side, on the top corner. So you should be able to make a Unity account and sign in. Just use your personal email for that, make a quick account, and it should work. I apologize. Worst case scenario, this will be up later, so you can go through it on your own time. Should not be too much of a problem as I'm not time conscious. Does everyone feel like they either have it installed and they're ready to go, or they just have given up and we'll do it later? All right, because I think I'm just going to move on. In the worst case, you can still just watch me do all this stuff, and you'll still get a pretty good idea of how all this works. So, we'll go into the FPS micro game. This will take a second to kind of kick stuff off. Any of them. Any of the micro games. Just pick one that you like. I would recommend if you're doing 2D, pick the 2D one. Okay, it's up. All right. So, this is the Unity micro games. The part that I was mentioning earlier is that there's a little tutorial section over here. So whenever you guys actually get this up, you will be able to go through all these little tutorials, which should walk you through most of the stuff I'm about to go over very smoothly. I just figured I'd have us go through everything so I can answer any questions you might have along the process. Just give me a little bit extra time. It's the micro game projects. There's 4 of them. There's a Lego one, there's a karting one, there's an FPS one, and there's a 3D platform one. It does not matter which one you do. I'm going to be showing off the FPS one because it's the one I've worked at. So, apologize for the whole mix-up there, and hopefully we'll move a little bit smoother now. All right, so to give you an overview of the Unity interface, we have all of our different windows here, minus the tutorials window, which should not really be there. So, whenever you normally open up a Unity project, you'll see all these windows. We'll go through them in order right here. So the first thing is your scene. That's where you're going to be basically having all your editing happening. So I'm laying out where the level is. You can think of the scene as a level. Whenever you load a different level in a game, usually you're going to be loading a different scene, and you'll have it preset up. We actually have other scenes in here, so I can drop this down, go to scenes, and go into secondary scene. You'll see another whole level here. There we go. Yeah, that's what your scene is. Then you have your game view, which is the view of wherever your main camera is in the scene. So it's what your player sees. So if I hit play, I'll start playing with this view. And then from there I will have control of the character. Certain things will appear in your scene view that won't appear in your game view. That usually has to do with camera settings. So that's where you should go to look if you're having any issues like that. Then you have the hierarchy. So this is all the objects that are in your scene. So you see here, you have some of these are just empty objects which are used to sort everything. You've got some the real ones, you have the player, enemies, some control paths, and some weapons and pickups. Everything in here is listed. You'll see it's called a hierarchy because everything is listed as children and parents. So on the player, you will have other objects that do different things. You have your camera, you have a lighter that controls what hits the player. You'll have a point for where they're aiming are. It's an FPS, so whenever you shoot, that'll be where the aiming is. You have a shadow projected object. So zoom in, it doesn't seem to you, but it's probably a little bit easier to see. You can double click on something to zoom in on it. There we go. So you can see here I have my camera. I have this capsule collider, you can see it here. It's this green outline capsule right there. Then you have an aim point, which is just where you're aiming at. And then this shadow projector will project the shadow. You can see the shadow there on the back. So how parented objects and children objects work are that any object that is the child of a parent will move relative to that parent. So if I move the shadow projector, it will just move wherever it wants to. But if I move, say, the player, everything attached to the player will move with it. So the shadow projector will move, the camera will move, all of it will move together. All right. The next thing is the inspector. So you'll see over here whenever I've clicked on the player, this inspector window has popped up. So this lists all of the components on your object. I probably mentioned that Unity is an object component system. So it is comprised of game objects in your scene, which I've gone over here. And then every object has a set of components on it that define its behavior. So if you have a box on the ground, it usually would have a collider so that it's a physical thing that can touch other stuff. It'll probably have a rigid body or something similar to control its physics. And it will have some other strips in case if you want the box to be able to be broken or something like that. Any behavior you want that box to have, you add components to control that. All right. Now we have the project down here. So this is what is basically the assets you have in your game project. So here we have all of our scenes. You'll have all of your animation stuff. You'll have audio files, prefabs, which we'll get to later, scripts. So all of your code will be in here. If you want to add something new, you can right-click to import a new asset from outside of Unity. Or if it's a Unity built asset, one that's inside the engine already, you can go to Create. And you have this entire list of all the stuff that you can make just from the editor itself. All right. Another thing that's helpful, especially for you coders, is the console. So if you're ever trying to debug something, I don't know if anything will play whenever I run when I play. But usually you can have debug statements. So like say, if I have my box on the ground, right? That metaphor. If I hit the box, I want the method that's supposed to break the box to occur. I want it to like run the code that does that. To check it, to see if it is running that code, I'll put a debug statement in there to say, hey, this code ran through, but it still didn't work. So I'll see that in the console while I'm playing the game if it goes through there. All right. If you don't see any of these, you can go to Window. That should control all of your different windows. Each of these are a window. You can reorganize these however you want. I want my project window up here for some reason I can. I can have my game window open at the same time as my scene window, so I can, while I'm playing the game, still be able to see me move around in the scene. You can see me move around. Yeah. All right. So. That's a brief overview of the user interface. Reset this real quick. Alright. So, we have objects, we know about components, we get the idea. How do we make objects? Well, you can do two things. First thing you need to do is you need to drag a object, something from down here, usually a prefab or anything from here and into the scene. And what that will usually do is it'll create an object that is relative to that, generally a prefab. We'll get into that a little bit later. Most of the time, though, you're going to be just clicking on your scene like that, or on the hierarchy, and you just want to create objects here. So you can create an empty object if you just want to make something completely customized. You can create a free object such as a cube or a sphere or a capsule or something like that. You can do particle systems and visual effects. You can create lights for your scene, audio objects, video objects, any UI elements you want to have, and then AI stuff for navigation. It's built in. Other than just basic navigation, you have to do most every script, I'm pretty sure. All right. So let's start with something basic here. So let me add a cube. So we have our level here, and that takes care of all of the different parts of the environment. So I want to add a new part to the environment. Add a cube to the environment. Right click, double click on this cube. That's where the cube is. So, how do I want to mess around with this cube? Well, I have a couple tools to do that. First is the pan tool, which lets me move around in the scene view. That's accessed via the Q key on your keyboard. I have the W key, which will access the transform position tool. So I'll be able to move this based on three axes, the x-axis in red, the z-axis in blue, and the y-axis in green. There we go. Next is rotation. That's with E. So I can rotate around the y-axis with this green circle. I can rotate around the x-axis with this red circle. And I can rotate around the z-axis with this blue circle. Then we have scales, group R. So I want to make this cube bigger. I want to make the entire thing bigger. I can do the center, make the whole thing bigger. Say I want to scale it, make it bigger along the x-axis. Well, I can click on the red, make it bigger along the x-axis, and bigger along the z-axis, and then a little bit thinner along the y-axis, like that. All right, and then, see, yeah. Those are the basic transforms, so that will base every object, if I go onto this cube here, has some basic components that it's usually built with. Any mesh object that like has form inside of your scene will have a couple things. Every object has a transform. That's the basic one. I'm pretty sure you can't even remove it. I don't even know how to. Then this has a cube mesh filter, and that will basically draw the outline of this cube, say, hey, this thing is a cube. And then the mesh renderer says, well, what does the cube look like? Currently, I say it looks gray with my default material here. And so it renders the cube as just a default gray. And then I have a collider on it so that whenever it touches something else, stuff doesn't go through it. It's not a ghost cube that things can just phase through. They'll hit it and stop moving. And now I want this cube to fall. So how do I do that? I add physics to it. I can do that with one of the most common components you'll use, which is the rigid body. So now I can determine, okay, do I want this to use gravity? Yes, I do. How much mass do I want to have? I'll give it 2 mass because it's pretty big. I don't want to give it too much angular drag or anything. Say I want to freeze its rotation. I can do that. So now it'll fall, but it won't lay flat because of the rotation script. We'll see how it looks normal first before we do it. So, let's play it real quick. There it is. It's sitting over there. Hang out. You don't die. You can walk over and run into it and bump it around. I can probably reposition it a little bit for that. So let's try it with the frozen rotation, right? We have it sort of in this specific arrangement. How do we freeze its rotation? Let's do that. Freeze all of its rotations. What will happen now? Right now. So now it's hitting here, but it's still sort of just floating in space. Yeah. So it's now rotating back to where you would think it would because the rotation is frozen. You can do that with position, all manner of sorts of things. All right. That's how you create an object. That's how you got the manipulation of objects. Go with the components. That's also how you the components are how you also attach code to objects. So say I want to add a script. I can go to my scripts folder here. Let's see, UI in actor. Let's say I want to make this an actor in my scene. So like, let's imagine this big cube. Let's use our imaginations here. This is an enemy. It's an evil cube. It wants to kill your family. How do I make it that I'm going to need to add a couple things to it? I need to add the enemy script. So the first thing I need to add is an actor. I have an actor script. I need to add an enemy script. These are already in the project, so that's why I have them. Normally you would need to code each of these scripts for yourself. That's why I recommend the micro games, because they give you kind of a jumping off point. You have all these scripts ready to go. You can kind of mod them or copy them if you want to. All that sort of stuff. Then I got my enemy controller, which gives me some health, a bunch of other stuff. Now this it should use some stuff. I can check with the other enemy here. So I'm checking the other one we talked about. What does it have? It has an enemy controller, an enemy mobile script, health, world space, health bar, mass mesh agent. Yeah.
So you searched that, the only reason that enemy script came up is because it's already in the
Yes, it's already in the project.
Okay.
So that's how you add scripts to it. So let's go over prefabs really quickly. So prefabs are, so say I made this cube, right? This is my enemy. It's kind of not really put together right now, but that's fine. I want to be able to just use this in my future project wherever I want. I just want to be able to make 1 million of them. How do I do that? I need to take it from the editor here, and I need to drag it down into the project folder. Now we'll create a prefab of this cube. You can note it's different because it has this blue symbol here. And now I can instance this prefab wherever I want in the project. So if I want to make another cube, I can just drag it and more cubes. I have infinite of them. And so say I want to edit one specific cube. I'll rotate this cube right here, or not B, yeah, there we go. I'll rotate this cube B that way, like that. All right. But then I want all the other cubes to be rotated a little bit, but not that way. So let's see, I can go into the cube and edit the prefab itself. So here I've edited the instance of the prefab. That doesn't affect all the prefabs. But I can edit all the prefabs, like the prefab itself, by going to, here, click on this. That'll take us into the prefab editor. And I can make this smaller. Like that. Cool. Now all of them are smaller. But this one is still rotated different from the rest of them because I rotated that one locally. So I modified the instance, they're not the prefab. So first, all the changes that are in the prefab will take effect, then any changes that you have on the instance will take effect. That's what I'm trying to demonstrate here. All right. Another thing to go into, let's make these cubes a specific color. So to do that, we're going to need to make some materials. So we'll go to create material, create a new material, we'll just name it red. And we'll change the albedo, which is your just color of it, to red. Like that. All of this other stuff is, we'll get into that if you're interested in 3D. So if I want to apply this to an object, I can drag and drop it, make it red. Let's say I want to make another material. Okay. Blue. This one blue. And we'll go into prefab and make them blue. So then you'll see that these two are still red because locally they're red. They were made red in local space. In prefab, in the actual prefab itself, it's blue, but it was made red in the instance. All right. Last real major thing we need to go over are layers and tags. So layers are for when you want to identify objects at a high level. So let's say I want there to be certain things that happen for player characters that don't happen for anything else. Say I want there to be certain things that happen for enemies that doesn't happen for anything else. If I want that to happen, I need to put all of the respective things on a specific layer. So if I have all my enemies on an enemy layer, I'll be able to go into my script, say, all right, do this effect only for things on the enemy layer, or only for things on the player layer. If you need to be more specific than that, you would have tags. So okay, I want there to be player layers, so this will only happen to players, but then is the player on the friendly team or the enemy team? How do I specify between that? The tags are what helps you out there. So if you don't have a tag here that you can use, you can go and add a tag with this little plus symbol here, name your tag, let's just call it beatbop or some shit. There you go. Now if I want to go to my tag, I can tag it as beatbop. I want it to be on the, we'll make beatbop, it's an enemy, let me make an enemy layer. So I'll make a new layer, I'll make an enemy. I should be able to go back to cube, and put it on the enemy layer. Now things will be affected on the enemy layer. Now if I've done that locally, but if you wanted to make sure that you did it for every cube, you need to go in here, click enemy, and debug on the prefab. You'll notice it's on the prefab view because it has all this blacked out with the rest of the thing. The only thing that's in color that's in focus is the specific prefab that you're working on. That's most of the major concepts I wanted to go over. If you're interested in doing that yourself, this tutorials section should go over quite a few of it. You got materials right here with change color. That'll go over prefabs. That'll go over importing outside assets, and there's a bunch more that you can do on the Unity website. Optional. Now, are there any questions? I know I went over a lot of stuff really quickly and kind of out of order. Yes. Yeah. So a layer is when you want to define behavior for objects on a high level. So there's very broad when you're thinking about layers. So there should be a lot of stuff on a layer, right? And then tags are more specific. So an enemy layer, a ground layer. So I want to have certain things register for my player as ground. So whenever they're on the ground, I know they're on the ground. They're not on like a cloud or something. If they're running into something, they're not an object. They're on the ground. So that everything that is like in the environment that qualifies as ground is on the ground layer. Then if I want to have it be more specific, what type of ground is it? Is it wood ground? Is it stone ground? Maybe I want to use that to control what sound is played when I walk on it. So that's what tags can be used for. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah, no. So 3D, the only thing that's different between 2D and 3D is rendering for the most part. So all of the objects, components, and stuff like that are basically going to be the same. 2D has different physics because you're only dealing with 2 dimensions. 3D has different physics because you're dealing with 3 dimensions. But for your actual art assets, most of it is just what's rendered. So with 3D rendering, you have to make sure you draw this whole wireframe mesh on the cube, and then draw all the pixels in a specific color. That's what your mesh filter and your mesh render are. When you're doing with 2D, you're going to have a sprite render, and that's just a 2D image. That's all you need. Sprite render. All right. Any more questions? No? All right. Well, thank you guys. Feel free to come and talk to us if you have any questions about getting stuff installed. We'll see you at the next meeting, I guess. Feel free, we've got another hour before club shuts now, so feel free to head into the other room and hang out with everybody.